At 62, Demi Moore told Vogue something that stopped people mid-scroll. The most important relationship she had ever known was the one she had with herself. Not with Bruce Willis, not with Ashton Kutcher, not with any of the men whose names had been attached to hers across 3 decades of coverage. Just herself. That statement carried the weight of everything she had survived inside it, and survived is genuinely the right word here. A childhood so fractured it would have finished most people before their 20s. 2 marriages that dissolved in front of a watching public. A miscarriage that broke something open in her that took years to close. A relapse so severe that paramedics were called to her front door by her own friends. And 3 daughters who stopped speaking to her entirely and held that silence for 3 years. What follows is the full account of how she built herself up, watched it collapse in pieces, and chose to begin again anyway. Demi Moore was born on November 11, 1962, in Roswell, New Mexico, and the circumstances were hard from the very beginning. Her biological father left before she arrived, her mother struggled with alcohol and instability, and the family relocated more than 30 times before Demi turned 14, never anywhere long enough to plant roots or feel safe. At 12 years old, she came home to find her mother had taken an overdose of pills, and Demi had to dig them out of her mother's mouth with her own small hands while her stepfather held the child down. That single moment imposed a weight of adulthood on her that she would carry for the next 50 years. Dyslexia made school a daily battle, and a series of eye surgeries added a physical dimension to the struggle that the classroom never accommodated. By 16, she had dropped out entirely and was living alone in Los Angeles, working debt collection and modeling assignments to cover rent. At 17, she married a rock musician named Freddie Moore, not because she loved him in any uncomplicated sense, but because the marriage felt like an exit from everything she was running from. She admitted years later in her memoir, Inside Out, that the night before the ceremony, she spent hours on the phone with a man she had met on a film set, which is about as clear a signal as you can send to yourself about the decision you are making. The marriage dissolved after 4 years, but she kept his name and made it her own, and that name would eventually appear above the title on some of the most profitable films of the following decade. Her first genuine break in entertainment came at 19, when she beat out over 1,000 other actresses for a role on the soap opera General Hospital, playing a journalist named Jackie Templeton at $750 per episode. It was not glamorous work by any measure, but it put her in front of viewers consistently and demonstrated to producers what she was capable of under daily production pressure. Off-screen, addiction was already active in her life. She partied heavily, sometimes continuously for days, and when director Joel Schumacher cast her in St. Elmo's Fire, he saw both the ability and the problem clearly enough to draw a firm line: get sober or lose the part. She chose sobriety. The studio arranged for someone to accompany her throughout the entire shoot, and St. Elmo's Fire opened in 1985 to an audience that pulled her into the circle of young performers the press labeled the Brat Pack, alongside Rob Lowe and Emilio Estevez. None of them were particularly fond of the term, but it generated sustained attention that opened every significant door that followed, and About Last Night extended that momentum before Ghost arrived and changed everything permanently. Ghost was produced on a budget of $22 to $23 million and went on to earn $55.7 million worldwide, taking the title of highest-grossing film of 1990 and standing, at the time, as the 3rd highest-grossing film in cinema history. The pottery wheel scene between Demi and Patrick Swayze, set to Unchained Melody, landed in the collective memory of an entire generation in a way that film moments rarely do, and it has never left. Her short haircut from the film spread through salons across the planet within months of release. A Golden Globe nomination and a Saturn Award for Best Actress followed, along with a coincidence nobody had engineered but everyone noticed. Ghost and Bruce Willis's Die Hard 2 held the #1 and #2 spots at the American box office simultaneously, something no other married couple in Hollywood had achieved before, and reportedly something that didn't repeat for another 34 years. The movie's commercial performance also forced a recalibration inside the studio system about what unconventional premises could achieve when executed well, and Demi's performance was central to why it worked. The momentum after Ghost never slowed, at least not professionally. A Few Good Men in 1992 placed her alongside Tom Cruise and Jack Nicholson in a film that earned more than $243 million globally, and she held her position in a genre that rarely built women into its center. Indecent Proposal came the following year, generating nearly $267 million on a $38 million budget and sparking a national argument about marriage, money, and women's autonomy that the film industry had not quite produced in that form before. Feminist critics came after her hard on that one, and she absorbed it and kept working. Striptease in 1996 earned her $12.5 million and the title of highest paid actress in Hollywood at that moment. G.I. Jane followed the next year with something entirely different. She shaved her head on camera, trained until her body fat dropped to 10%, and performed most of her own stunts while playing the first woman attempting Navy SEAL selection. Playing a stripper unsettled women, she reflected afterward, and playing a soldier unsettled men, and the fact that she had achieved both within a single calendar year seemed to prove a point she was making without stating it directly. Bruce Willis entered her life at a premiere in 1987, at a moment when she was still formally engaged to Emilio Estevez, and the pull between them was immediate enough that 4 months later, Bruce proposed during a Las Vegas boxing trip. They married that same night, November 21, 1987, in what was either enormously romantic or enormously impulsive, and probably both. 3 daughters arrived across the following years: Rumor in 1988, Scout in 1991, and Tallulah in 1994. Their careers pulled them in different directions for long stretches, and Bruce wanted more of a domestic life than Demi was prepared to step away from her career to provide. After 11 years, they separated in 1998, and what followed was something that public divorces almost never produce: a genuine, warm, functional friendship. They co-parented without bitterness, attended each other's subsequent weddings, vacationed together as an extended family, and built a blended household arrangement that their daughters grew up inside of and later spoke about with real gratitude. Rumor described it plainly: having parents who divorced and still chose each other as family was the most complete picture of love she had ever been given. Demi was 40 when Ashton Kutcher, 25 years old and well known from the television series That 70s Show, appeared at the same premiere event in 2003, and the two of them talked on the phone for 8 uninterrupted hours the following day. 3 weeks after that first conversation, he had already met her daughters and her ex-husband. 2 months in, he arranged a midnight picnic on a Santa Barbara beach, spelled out "Marry Me" in rose petals, and offered a 5-carat Asher-cut diamond worth $250,000. By the 4th month, they had moved in together and launched a production company called Catalyst Films, whose first project, Beauty and the Geek, became a successful reality series. The 15-year age difference gave the entertainment press years of material. The word cougar entered mainstream usage largely because of their relationship, and the late-night jokes were relentless enough that Demi addressed the whole thing directly by appearing on Saturday Night Live in 2005 in old-age makeup and performing an entire sketch built around the public obsession. Their September 2005 wedding at their Beverly Hills home had 100 guests, including Bruce Willis, who was reportedly moved to tears during the vows. Ashton gave each of Demi's 3 daughters a Cartier love bracelet that day, and at 27 he threw himself into the role of stepfather by attending school events, learning to French braid hair, and enrolling in parenting classes to understand what the girls actually needed from him. 6 months into the relationship, a routine prenatal checkup on September 23, 2003 revealed that their baby girl, whom they had named Chaplain Ray, had no heartbeat at 6 months. Demi had been sober for nearly 20 years at that point, and the grief broke through that foundation with a force nothing else had managed. She blamed herself, connecting the occasional drinking and smoking she had done in the pregnancy's earliest weeks to the loss, and depression settled in with a weight that counseling 3 times a week for months could not fully lift. Vicodin and alcohol became the tools she used to manage what grief couldn't process, and her weight dropped to 98 pounds. Multiple rounds of IVF followed without a successful pregnancy, and each attempt that failed added more pressure to a marriage already carrying more than it could hold. Ashton said afterward that the miscarriage was the moment he understood he was ready for fatherhood, but by then, the emotional distance between them had already started growing in ways neither had yet found words for. The marriage was visibly deteriorating by 2011, and on their 6th wedding anniversary, September 24th, Ashton reportedly spent the night with a 22-year-old woman named Sarah Leal, a person Demi had actually encountered before at a bowling alley where Leal had handed Ashton her number directly in front of both Demi and one of her daughters without any apparent hesitation. The affair surfaced through a Google alert on Demi's phone while she was preparing for a red carpet appearance. She confronted him, he confirmed it, and then attempted to frame it as a consequence of choices they had made together in the marriage, which extended the wound rather than addressing it. A second woman, Brittany Jones, 21 at the time, came to light within days. What made it worse was the timing. Days after the story became public, Demi had to stand beside Ashton at a formal event for their anti-human trafficking foundation and hold herself together professionally while he addressed the crowd, knowing everything she now knew. The separation announcement came on November 17, 2011, and the divorce finalized 2 years later in November 2013. What came after the separation was the darkest chapter of her life by any concrete measure. On January 23, 2012, paramedics were called to her Benedict Canyon home after she suffered a seizure at a party, having combined synthetic cannabis with nitrous oxide. Over the following 3 years, she was taking up to 12 Vicodin pills every day, mixing vodka with Red Bull, and her weight fell to 102 pounds as the seizures continued. She stopped returning calls from anyone who had been close to her, missed Rumor's 30th birthday, and withdrew from her daughters' lives so completely that all 3 of them eventually stopped reaching out. They skipped her 50th birthday. That silence held for 3 years. By September 2012, she had entered Cirque Lodge, a rehabilitation center in Utah that cost $150,000 a month. Tallulah, who had just completed her own time in rehabilitation in November 2015, was the one who reached out first and broke through the silence. Demi flew to New York that same day. The road back ran through 18 months of therapy and family counseling and a week-long retreat in Arizona in 2017 where the 4 of them worked through the accumulated damage together. For her 60th birthday in 2022, Rumor, Scout, and Tallulah had the word mother tattooed on their bodies in her own handwriting. Bruce Willis's family announced his aphasia diagnosis in 2022, and Demi responded publicly and immediately, joining his birthday celebration in 2023 in a video that circulated widely and showed precisely what their post-divorce friendship had become across 25 years. She roasted him at his Comedy Central roast in 2019, telling the crowd she had been married to him for the first 3 Die Hard films, which made sense, she said, because the last 2 sucked and the audience loved her for it. At 62, Demi Moore coined the phrase solo partnering to describe the way she now moves through her life, a deliberate focus on her own development rather than a search for someone to make her feel whole. The hashtag trended globally after her birthday interview in Vogue in 2024. In the past year, she went on 3 carefully chosen dates, one of them with an astrophysicist she met at a TED Talk with whom she went stargazing in the Mojave Desert. She described the evening as not romantic, but also as one of the more meaningful experiences she had collected in recent years, which is a distinction worth sitting with. She also built a genuine friendship with Mila Kunis, Ashton's wife, and the 2 of them meet every 2 weeks for a book club they run together. Her dog Pilaf has accumulated over 2 million followers on Instagram and by all accounts is thriving. If love finds her again, she said, it will be someone who adds to a life she already considers full, not someone she reaches for because she feels empty without them. That difference between choosing and needing is what every chapter of this story has been building toward, even the ones that nearly finished her.